Coming up on the most recent edition, the pre-Thanksgiving edition of the Next Man Up podcast of the Press Play Podcast Network, Kenny Rhoda and I recap Browns Dolphins from Week 12, look ahead to Browns Steelers from Week 13, look at the NFL playoff picture, and we talk Buckeyes versus Wolverines this Saturday, as well as Joe Burrow, Chase Young, and the Heisman race. Welcome to the latest edition of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network with your producer, director extraordinaire, Chase Smith. I'm Dennis Maniloff, along with co-host Kenny Rhoda. Roadman, we have not spoken since the Cleveland Browns disposed of the Miami Dolphins. What was it, 41-24, I believe, was the final. It's been so long because our schedules were packed. So now we get a chance to go over that game a little bit. What were your thoughts in the immediate aftermath of the Browns' third straight victory?
They did to a crappy football team what you should do to a crappy football team when you're the better football team. On paper, on the field, in fantasy world, in Madden, the Browns were the better football team, and they jumped out to a big lead, maybe took their foot off the gas a little bit, let the Dolphins back in. Fitz magic, threw his 2 touchdown passes and ran one to make it interesting. But in the end, the Browns offense did what they were supposed to do from week one. This is what we expected from the Browns offense from week one, to carry this football team. And with a depleted defense, no Larry Ogunjobi, no Olivier Vernon, no Myles Garrett, of course, no Morgan Burnett, and whoever else was out. You wanted the offense to carry this game. They did. The Bake Show, as you like to call them, distributed the football to both Landry and OBJ. Chubb and Kareem Hunt both had touchdowns. So the offense did what it's supposed to do, and it needs to do that the rest of the way for this team to get into the playoffs.
No question about it. With the suspensions and injuries to the Browns defense, you had to have the Browns offense control matters, and it doesn't get much better than 28-0 in the first half. Now, I will say that I was disappointed in the Browns for allowing that 3 at the end of the half. I thought it was careless to allow that, and it gave the Dolphins a teeny-weeny bit of life, to loosely quote Bruce what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name? Butch Davis. But and then, at 28-17, I guess I was nervous for about 5 minutes, but the Browns, get it back in gear and score a couple of more times. So you credit them for a job well done, and it was good to see Baker playing well. He's stacking quality performances just as the Browns are stacking wins. I have Baker for, 4 good ones now, and the Browns for 3 straight wins. So he's one ahead of his team, but everybody got involved, or so it seemed. I mean, Jarvis Landry was a man on a mission. No coincidence. He's facing the Dolphins. He dominates. They can't stop him. I did think this, though, about the Dolphins with, Coach Flores from the Belichick tree. I thought, at least this is how it was coming across on the TV with the Fox Sports telecast. Every other play, you saw Flores yapping at an official. You saw the Dolphins constantly complaining about no calls. I'm thinking, my goodness, these guys think they're the Patriots, with the amount of complaining they do. And the reality is they're just the Dolphins. But you can come at me and say, well, that's Flores trying to instill in his players. We're not going to take any crap. And if we think we're wrong, we're going to speak up about it. And just because we're losing now doesn't mean we're going to be losing forever. So we're going to establish a culture of, ornery, if you will. And but yeah, I found that a little surprising. But other than that, there wasn't much that surprised me with what the Dolphins were presenting to the Browns on either side of the ball. Fitzmagic's limitations by and large. and the defense has a rebuilt secondary, among other things. So you figured that Mayfield could make hay, and in fact, he did.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's give some credit to a few guys on defense who stepped up in the absence of all those players we talked about earlier, D-Man. How about Joe Schobert? Joe freaking Schobert, man. Back-to-back games with 2 interceptions at linebacker. That doesn't happen that often. I heard some stat it's happened like 4 times in the last 40 years. So Joe Schobert stepping up big. And Sheldon Richardson, you needed somebody on that defensive line to have a game. 2 sacks for Sheldon Richardson in that game, picking up the slack there. And I thought Denzel Ward played very well on the outside. So I liked what I saw defensively. Yeah, they gave up 24 points, but just scored 41. That's how you're going to win games the rest of the way without Myles Garrett on the defensive side of the field for you, because he's suspended, and deservedly so. So this is the way this team now is going to have to approach each game. The offense is going to have to pick up the slack. The defense just do enough and win football games. And what did Lou Brown say back in the movie Major League? Well, 1 game is good, 2's not bad, but 3 games, fellas, that's a winning streak. So that's what they have. They've got a winning streak right now, and it's going to be 4 in a row after Sunday when they go into Pittsburgh at 1 o'clock and whack the offensive, inept, pathetic Pittsburgh Steelers with Duck, Duck, Goose at quarterback for them.
Well, you jumped me there a little bit, Roadman. I was going to talk a little bit more about the Dolphins, but there's really no need. I'm glad you advanced the narrative to Week 13. But I do want to say one thing about the Week 12 weekend. The Browns remain in playoff contention despite 5-6. And they got a huge break when the Oakland Raiders went to the Meadowlands and got dust busted by the Jets. Meaning that the number 2 wild card seed, because the Bills hold the number 1 wild card seed in the AFC at 8-3,
right.
But the number 2 wild card seed was held by a team, I believe it's Pittsburgh, with but nobody had more than 6 victories. There are a bunch of teams tied with 6 victories, and I think Pittsburgh has all the tiebreakers. So Pittsburgh is technically in the second AFC hole, if my memory serves.
For now,
the key is that Oakland could have notched that 7th victory and did not do so. And now the Browns are in that pack. So as we think ahead to Pittsburgh, I mean, you are convinced that the Browns are going to win. I am not convinced.
By 3 touchdowns. Well, 3 touchdowns on Sunday. They will beat the Steelers by 3 touchdowns.
That's really astonishing to me, Roadman, on many, many levels, because you're a guy who knows the Steelers very well. You wouldn't say that just to say it.
Nope.
I'm looking at what Vegas thinks, and Vegas sees it as almost a toss-up, essentially. I think the Browns are favored by a couple. The public seems to be on the Browns, pushing the line 1 or 2 points. But I see it as a final minute game. I think that the Steelers are going to be wired for this game, unlike a lot of games they've played, simply because of what happened a couple of weeks ago. I think they're going to be jacked up. Their crowd is going to be wild. It's going to cause problems for the Browns. And I think that Hodges, yes, he is Devlin Hodges. He's not Roethlisberger, or he's not even a second stringer in the hierarchy. But I think Hodges will preside over an offense that's able to move the ball a little bit against.
With who? Connor's out. Juju, if he plays, has a bad knee coming off a concussion. Deontay Johnson, not bad. The 3rd round pick. Benny Snell, Samuel. I mean, their offense is inept, D-man. Their defense is good. All right, don't get me wrong. But I see the Browns winning this game like 31-10. I just think it'll be close for a half because of the emotion and everything that happened with Mason Rudolph. I just don't think they can score points to keep up with the Cleveland Browns. So I'll be shocked if this thing is closer than 2 touchdowns.
Wow. Again, I'm hearing this from Roadman for the first time, and as a result, I am stunned that Roadman is saying it's going to be this easy, because I was giving the Steelers the benefit of the doubt going home. for this revenge game, if you will. But I can see where they are going to be offensively challenged. But I think the Browns are going to be defensively challenged. Ultimately, I think the Browns do prevail, but I think it'll be much closer because of the venue, because the Browns, Heinz Field has been a house of horrors for the franchise. Now, you can't hold, a bunch of Browns responsible for the Heinz house of horrors because they haven't played in that many games there. Specifically, Mayfield has only played in one, and he was terrible in it. So, you don't necessarily say that this group of Browns is automatically going to be bad just because the franchise has been bad at Heinz. But it's a tough place to play, and I think that I still have a lot of respect for the Steelers' defense. I think it'll be a low-scoring game, but that defense and that ability to rush the passer is going to cause enough problems for Cleveland that the game will come down to the fourth quarter.
You know what? Here's the thing. I think the Browns are going to win handily. You think they're going to win by a few points. The bottom line is just win, right? At this point, you think Belichick cares how many points he wins by? No, it goes down as a win, and you move on to the next opponent. That's what the Browns need to do. They need to get back to 500 at 6-6. They need this for the tiebreaker over the Steelers, right? Head to head, should they end up tied in a wild card spot. If they win this, they're still undefeated within the division. Now, the division was taken from them yesterday when Lamar Jackson went out and put a whooping to the genius young coach and the Rams from Los Angeles yesterday. Lamar Jackson, MVP in the league. I was wrong about him. I was wrong about the Ravens. They're the best team in the AFC North, maybe the best team in the AFC. But
maybe. Oh, my God, Roadman, I was hoping you wouldn't mention the Ravens because I had a headache watching them last night. They are absolutely, positively the best team in the AFC. I'll say they're the best team in the NFL. Wow. This team is awesome beyond belief. I can't even tell you how dominant that team was last night. 6 touchdowns in their first 6 possessions. The Rams were ecstatic that they, quote unquote, held the Ravens to a field goal in the 7th possession. Or maybe it was a touchdown in the 7th, but eventually they held them to a field goal. I just cannot even believe how good the Ravens are. Was it 45-6? So it was 42-7, 6 straight touchdowns, and then the field goal. And Harbaugh didn't care. He had Russ, our boy Robert Griffin III throwing a bomb up 42-6. I mean, the Ravens are absolutely awesome. And their 7-game winning streak, they're killing people. Lamar Jackson, hand him the MVP right now. The Ravens are light years better than Belichick at this point. If the Ravens get home field on Belichick, they beat them by 2 touchdowns. If the Ravens have to go to the Patriots, they beat them by 1 touchdown. Either way, the Baltimore Ravens are going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl unless Lamar Jackson gets hurt. And the reason I'm so despondent about it is because the Browns cannot, get out of their own way. Now they have to look at Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens for the next, 10 to 12 years.
Don't give them that run just yet. You know what? How long did that last for RG3 before he went down with an injury, the running quarterback? I'm not completely sold.
Griffin's never done what Jackson has done this year. Never did it.
He was, when you look at what he did, he was rookie of the year. Lamar Jackson wasn't rookie of the year. Robert Griffin III did it in his rookie season and then got hurt. Hey, I'm impressed. And you know what the Ravens are saying? They're saying, we don't care that he's a running quarterback. We don't care that he runs the ball a lot and is going to get hit. We're willing to take that chance. And we got a backup guy who kind of runs the same type of offense. So if he goes down, we'll plug in the next guy or we'll draft the next guy. I give them credit for being proactive and taking this approach where everybody else, is concerned about their quarterback getting hit. They don't care because that's what Lamar Jackson does. And it may be the wave of the future in the NFL. We'll have to wait and see. Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. Maybe this is the way of the NFL for the future, and they're ahead of the curve. But I'm not ready to build a bust to put, just next to our radio station in Canton, Ohio, WHBC, of Lamar Jackson just yet. Win something first, okay? Win a playoff game first, and then maybe I'll start giving you the complete love that a lot of people are. And don't forget, the Browns waxed them in Baltimore at the beginning of the season, so they can be beat.
I guess, but this version of the Ravens can't be beat. I mean, this version of the Ravens has won 7 in a row and just dominating people. I mean, think of the last 2 games. They get the AFC South leading Houston Texans so-called showdown. Yeah, okay, 41-7, I think it was. Then they go out west. Oh, the Rams are going to give it to them. Oh, really? Yeah, Harbaugh, if he really wanted to and wanted to push the pace, he probably could have dropped 60 on the boy genius.
Maybe.
To me, the Ravens are incredible. I don't see how they're going to lose again this year.
49ers this week.
49ers
this week. That defensive line.
Roadman, I needed a laugh, and you just provided me one.
That defensive line of the
Garoppolo goes up against that defense. He's going to crap his pants. Oh, man. Take this to the bank, all right? Any of you all listening, take this to the Monopoly Bank because we have to do this for entertainment purposes only. The Ravens are going to blow the Niners right out of MT Bank Stadium or wherever they play.
Wow.
That's not even a contest. The Niners
on Sunday.
Oh my gosh. The Niners they got a nice little defensive line.
It's a nice little defensive line. That's all, like 6 deep that can get after the quarterback.
You watch how Lamar Jackson and Ingram are going to be ducking underneath these guys and dipsy doing their way down the field. I got them winning by 20. I mean, it's not even going to be close.
All right. Well, I got the Steelers losing to the Browns by 21. You got the Ravens beating, and we'll see who's closer the next time we do this.
I just can't believe that that the Browns are going to have to deal with Lamar Jackson for years and years and years. Because listen, there's nothing wrong with Baker Mayfield, but he's no Lamar Jackson. That's why I'm depressed right now. I mean, Lamar Jackson is so much more versatile than the Bake Show. As much as I like Bake, it's depressing. It really is.
Jimmy Garoppolo's thrown for more yards than Lamar Jackson this year. I'm just saying. Okay, that's all. I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't know. I've seen Lamar Jackson play games this season that I haven't seen from a quarterback, I don't know, ever. I mean, I think they're – well, yeah, but they do a disservice to Jackson by saying, oh, he's comparable to Mike Vick. Mike Vick was never doing what Jackson's doing. I mean, come on. Mike Vick was good, but he wasn't MVP caliber good. Maybe he was for a couple years. I don't know. But it's just that's a sore subject for me.
This is you know what, and you know what pains me? The 2 best teams, I hate them both. The Ravens and the Patriots. If they play, I don't know who the hell to root for. I don't. I can't stand them both. I don't want Brady to win another one, but I can't stand the Ravens for what they did to the Browns and their fans. So that's going to be a tough. Hopefully they both lose before they get to the AFC Championship game, but highly unlikely when you look at the rest of the teams in the AFC.
Yeah, I think Belichick, he's at 10-1, and I think they know deep down the Ravens are running the table. So he's thinking, I have to keep winning.
Yeah.
He cannot afford to fall into a 2-victory or 2-loss season, because if he does and they end up tied, then of course the Ravens win because they won.
Let me ask you this: Belichick and Brady versus Harbaugh and Jackson in New England, who has the advantage?
Well, I said that I think if it goes to New England, the Ravens only win by a touchdown. If it's in Baltimore, it's 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
I mean, I saw this movie in Baltimore, and I saw Belichick get outclassed like he has very few times in his career. Now, some of the conspiracy theorists were saying, oh, well, Belichick was saving, some stuff and he was holding back and he wanted to see what the Ravens had so he could file it away for the playoffs. I'm not so sure about that. I think he wanted to win. I think he was run over by this machine all of a sudden that has come out of the turf in Baltimore, and he was as surprised as anybody by this. I don't think this was a guy who was saying, I'm not going to play certain plays, or I'm not going to have certain schemes dialed up because I want to save them for the playoffs. I think the Ravens win either way. That's how scared of the Ravens I am. But when we talk about the Browns at the Steelers, you think and I think that they're going to win, different routes to the victory. That would be 4 consecutive victories and 6-6. What do you think, assuming they do win on Sunday, Roadman, do you believe the Browns can run the table and make the playoffs?
No, I think they can make the playoffs. I don't think they can get to 10 wins. They're not good enough where I think they won't have one slip up, D-man. And the games
I got the slip up. The slip up.
You got Arizona?
The Ravens.
Well, Ravens, okay. Arizona, Baltimore are the 2 games that, if I'm looking at the remaining games, at Pittsburgh, Cincy home, at Arizona, Baltimore home, at Cincy to close out. Now, the Red Rocket, the Red Rooster, whatever the hell his name is coming back at quarterback for the Bengals. I don't know if that makes much of a difference in Andy Dalton, but they'll face him twice instead of whoever was quarterbacking for that crappy team, in the Queen City. So they beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. They'll beat Cincy at home. Going to Arizona could be tricky, and because they're looking ahead to Baltimore the next week, right? That's the one that scares me a little bit. I think they'll lose one of those 2 games, Arizona, Baltimore. So 9-7 is how I see them finishing. I picked 10-6 at the beginning of the year, so they have to run the table to finish that way. I can't see that happening. So will 9-7 get them in? Maybe. I think they end up tied with somebody else at 9-7. And it just better be anybody but the Tennessee Titans, because that's who holds the tiebreaker over them. If they beat Pittsburgh, okay, and win the rest of the games that I think they'll win.
Roadman, I looked at I had somebody read me actually the Buffalo Bills remaining schedule, and even though they're 8-3 in the one hole of the wild card, it is not easy for the Bills.
No, I'll give it to you. You ready?
The final 5 games, starting with Dallas on Thanksgiving. Yeah.
At Dallas, Baltimore at home, at Pittsburgh, at New England, then they close out with the Jets. D-man, they could lose 4 of those games right there for the last 5 games. And if they end up tied with the Browns, if the Browns could get the 9-7, D-man, the Browns beat Buffalo, and that's where that tiebreaker comes into play. So that's a great point by you. Even though they're the number 1 wild card, they could lose 4 of their last 5 games and finish at 9-7.
At the same time, I don't know how the tiebreakers work if there are more than 2 teams tied at a certain record.
Right.
If the Browns, let's say it would be the Browns, Bills, and Titans at 9-7. Titans, that would be 4 straight years of 9-7 for the Titans. But would the tiebreaker with the Browns and the Bills matter versus, what the Browns did against the Titans? I don't know how that works in a 3 or more way tie. But yeah, the Bills don't have an easy road. The Titans, you look at their schedule and it's prickly. There's a bunch of teams that are all jammed in there. But again, I say that the Browns got a huge break when the Raiders stubbed their toe. And I'm not even convinced the Raiders are all that, but they were poised to go to 7 wins. And I'm sure they thought they had it by going to a bad Jets team. The problem is they caught the Jets at the wrong time. They were coming off 2 straight victories. The Jets were, and happened to be playing really well, whereas the Browns caught the Jets at the opportune time when Darnold was out and Simeon winds up being knocked out, and they bring in Falk. So, all right. Well, listen, I wanted to get your gauge on that, but I also want to address something. The Ohio State situation, because I know that producer director extraordinaire Chase Smith wants us to talk Cavs at some point and we very well might.
Do we have to?
But it's good. Maybe it'll have to be once they win 10 in a row. Who knows when that's going
How
to be.
about if they just win 10 games,
5 in a row?
forget 10 in a row? Yeah.
Hey, they're rebuilding. It's no
They are.
secret.
They are.
You can't expect them to do much. But I do want to talk Buckeyes and the college football playoff, because tonight the most recent CFP rankings were released, and Ohio State leapfrogged LSU into the 1 hole, and then LSU in the 2 hole, Clemson 3, Georgia 4, Bama 5. I don't remember who 6 is, and Oklahoma is 7. I would have to be Utah at 6 and Oklahoma at 7. What do you think, Roadman, of Ohio State jumping over LSU? And do you think Ohio State goes into the big house and takes out Jim Harbaugh this Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, I was surprised by it, D-Man. I thought they were on their way to a blowout of Penn State this past weekend and therefore deserved to leapfrog LSU. But when they let Penn State back into the game and showed that they are vulnerable when they turn it over 3 times and it's a 28-17 game, I didn't think that was an impressive enough victory over Penn State to leapfrog Louisiana State University, better known as LSU. But the committee thought otherwise, and if you're Ohio State, you're thrilled, because guess what? You control your own destiny now. You win out, right? You beat that team up north in the outhouse in Ann Arbor, and then you beat Minnesota or Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. You're the number 1 seed in the Final Four of college football. And to me, there's one team that can beat Ohio State, D-Man. You know who that is?
Ohio State.
That's it. They are the only team I think that can beat the Buckeyes themselves, turning it over, penalties. 3 times at home, you can get away with it against a Penn State team. 3 times on the road, you're looking at Purdue and Iowa all over again this weekend in Michigan. Okay, and I said it one time, and that's the only time I'll say the M word during this podcast. I think the Buckeyes are focused under Ryan Day. I think they are ready to go up there and take this challenge on. And again, they don't have to win by 3 touchdowns, 10 points. All they have to do is win by 1 point on the road, remain undefeated, and they control their own destiny. And I think they will go up to the outhouse in Ann Arbor and knock off the Wolverines.
Well, I guess this is the Northeast Ohio pessimist in me. I mean, I've just been beaten down by so much. But on the other hand, Ohio State has owned Michigan in recent years. So
let me refresh everybody's memory. 7 in a row, 14 of 15, and 16 of the last 18. There you go.
So by no means should I be pessimistic. It's not so much pessimism. It's that I guess I'm sitting here wondering, if it doesn't happen for Harbaugh on Saturday, when will it ever happen for him as coach of Michigan in terms of beating Ohio State? Because he finally has a team that's playing reasonably well, and he also is in his house. So I don't know. That's where my nerves come from. But you're right. Ryan Day has been a machine. The Buckeyes look tremendous. They have Chase Young ready, willing, and able to dominate.
Best player in college football, by the way. Joe Burrow's on the cover of this week's Sports Illustrated, but Chase Young is the best player in college football, hands down. 16 and a half sacks in only 9 games. He was a disruptive force in that Penn State game with 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 9 total tackles. He's the best player in college football.
All right, well, let me ask you this then. Going off of what you just said, and I'm not going to argue. As much as I am a Joe Burrow fan,
I love him too.
I think that Chase Young is the best player in college football. So along those lines, yes, Young missed a couple of games, but let's suppose he goes into, as you said, the outhouse and has another one of his Chase Young type games and then dominates in the Big Ten championship game. Do you think that is enough to overcome 2 ginormous obstacles? Well, 3. 1, Burrow. Yeah. 2, the fact that he's a defensive player. And 3, that he missed 2 games because of his suspension. Do you think Young does enough if, again, assuming he has 2 more dominant games, does he do enough to win the Heisman?
To win, no. To get a trip to New York, probably. I think by missing 2 games and because he was suspended, a lot of voters will hold that against him. But I don't think that'll keep college football from making sure the best player in college football is at least in New York to experience that. Me personally, D-Man, I don't want them going to New York. I don't want any Buckeyes going to New York. That's a distraction. I want their focus to be one, purpose, one sole focus, and that's to win a national championship. Ask Troy Smith how that banquet circuit was when he won the Heisman Trophy and put on about 10 or 15 pounds at In-N-Out Burger and wherever the hell else
Oh,
he would
Roadman.
when they got spanked by Urban Meyer in Florida 41-14, okay? So I don't want these guys going on the banquet circuit. I want them staying in Mickey Marotti's sight, in his weight room, in that Woody Hayes facility, and just working out and preparing for who's ever next.
Speaking of Burrow, tremendous season. And that's the other thing, too. As great as Young has been, it would be one thing if he was up against guys who were, having really good years but weren't putting up phone numbers against great teams like Burrow seemingly has every single week. Or not every week he's playing a great team, but he's putting up great numbers and he's beating good competition. He beat Alabama. So, and by the way, I find it hilarious that our buddy Nick Saban claims that Auburn is probably the best team that his Alabama Crimson Tide will have faced this year.
Right.
Oh, that's funny. They faced LSU and got beat. But you know what Nick's doing. He's playing the angles to try to make sure that everybody's paying attention so that when he beats Auburn, he can say, see, this was a signature victory, and therefore he could jump into the 4 and make the college football playoff, even with Mac Jones. But I wanted to ask you, though, about Burrow and his pro prospects. I think he's a phenomenal pro prospect. If you are the Bengals, let's say the Bengals finish off what they're supposed to do and not lose the number 1 seed, the number 1 pick overall, what do you do if you're Cincinnati? Do you take Burrow or do you take Tua or Chase Young?
I forget Tua. With the hip injury, with 2 ankles that have been surgically repaired at this point, I'll pass on Tua. No, thank you, China doll. So then it comes down to the former Buckeye Joe Burrow at quarterback or the current Buckeye Chase Young as a defensive end. So if I'm Cincinnati and I look within the division, D-Man, I got to find me a quarterback to match up with Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, right? And Roethlisberger supposedly is coming back. But if he doesn't, then you're fine because Rudolph sucks. They benched him last week. If they don't, they lose to Cincinnati. Duck, goose isn't the future there with the Steelers at quarterback. So they're going to have to find somebody after Roethlisberger. But the 2 teams you're looking up at to challenge are going to be the Browns and the Ravens. So you better get a quarterback. So whoever you think is the best quarterback in this class, if you have the first overall pick, if you're the Bengals, not every team, but if you're the Bengals, you go get that quarterback. And right now, all Burrows is done, Burrow, excuse me. I sound like John Lucas. I wanted to add an S to his name because he's one of the bigs, Joey Burrows. But anyways, Joe Burrow, 4,000 yards passing, 41 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. And then I'm looking at his rushing touchdowns.
Sneaky runner.
3 rushing touchdowns, almost 250 yards rushing. So that's and he's the coach's son. He's a coach's son.
Yeah.
He eats, sleeps, drinks, thinks the game like a coach. So that's going to be tough to pass up if you're Cincinnati. But they are the Bengals, so they'll probably screw it up. Yeah,
and he's a local enough kid too. I mean, when you think about where he's from in Ohio, it's close enough to Cincinnati. So it was probably a stupid question to ask if Young would be their first pick simply because the Bengals are in dire need of a quarterback. I mean, you can't reheat Dalton, although they're trying to do that now just for whatever reason. I don't know, but they've moved on from Finley. They're back to Dalton. And they've got to get a quarterback in there. And I'm with you on there's just too many medical questions about Tua. I know that all the doctors came out of the hip surgery. Oh, he's 100%, 100%, 100%. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. But you can't escape the fact that he's had, surgery on both ankles. He's had the hip. I want to say there was another injury in there somewhere. in high school that escapes me. Maybe there wasn't, but the bottom line is I think he's just there's too many question marks surrounding his injury history to invest the number one overall in him, and therefore I would go the Burrow route. I do find it interesting. I don't find it interesting as much as I love a certain individual. I don't want to quote him because there was a tweet where maybe I misinterpreted it, but I could have sworn a guy we know, Kenny, said that Burrow is nothing but the second coming of Andy Dalton. And I was like,
oh, wow.
That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, especially from a guy we respect.
Right.
And I was like I said, I don't want to use his name because I don't want to misquote him if the tweet was meant as a tongue-in-cheek joke or something. But I was like, there's no way that Joe Burrow is the next Andy Dalton to me. I think his ceiling is much higher than that.
I agree with you. I don't see that either, D-man. You know, you look at, like I said, a coach's son. This kid's been around football his entire life. He was good enough to play at Ohio State. And, he didn't transfer to, I don't know, like, a MAC school, no offense, or just somewhere to play. He transferred to LSU in the SEC, beat Nick Saban's squad, right? He's 6'4", 220 pounds. And he's mobile. If we're talking about mobile quarterbacks being the wave of the future, he offers some of that to you as well. So that to me is a little bit surprising. But yeah, you know who's the best judge of quarterbacks that I've come across, D-man, in all my years of doing this? Ernie Accorsi. Ernie Accorsi, the Bernie Kosar, he had Ben Roethlisberger ranked up there along with Eli Manning that year. Those were the 1 and 2 that they were going after. With the Giants, that he has just an uncanny ability from the eye test as well as everything else to pick out. I'd love to pick his brain about Joey Burrow and see what he thinks. And if he gives it the thumbs down, then okay. But I'd be surprised if he did.
All right, Roadman. Well, that should just about do it for this episode.
One more thing.
Wait.
Oh, we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan. We don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. We're from Ohio. We're from Ohio. O-H. We're from Ohio. I-O. We don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan. We don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. We're from Ohio.